The Russians have lost the equivalent of 5 divisions in heavy equipment in their Avdiivka campaign alone, while they have just activated another part of the front line. This is happening while heavy equipment, heavy aid from the West is arriving in Ukraine, but we'll talk about this as well as about anything else that has happened along the front line and in the rear areas in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. The Russians have advanced in Kursk here. They have reached the town of Lyubimovka. Over the past couple of days, we have a geolocation in here, which means they have gained some additional ground in this regard and pushed the Ukrainians a little bit away. They also advanced east of Kremanue into this region here. We have a geolocation about this as well. You can see the forested area here. They have reached to this point, probably from the north. They managed to advance somewhat into the south. So while the front line is moving in favor of the Russians, the overall situation has not significantly changed here. The Russians now have the superiority in Kursk and they use it to slowly advance, but overall their advances are still fairly limited. We'll switch over to the Kharkiv area, and here the Ukrainians have said that they are currently investigating the execution of 4 Ukrainian prisoners of war by the Russians inside of the aggregate factory that is here. They have witnesses, they have evidence of this having happened, and they're currently investigating it. The Ukrainians are also saying here in the Kharkiv front, the Russians once again used chemical agents against them in the war. We do not have details about what was used. In the past, the Russians have often used riot control agents, which might not directly be lethal. They can be lethal though, but they are still banned by the Convention of Chemical Weapons, which Russia has signed and ratified. We'll switch over to the Eastern Front, and here we have the Russians advancing north of Pishchane. We have them advance roughly to this point here. We have that geolocated here on the map, where they have managed to broaden their spearhead towards the Oskil here in the northern direction. Further south, we have the Russians advancing south of Makivka. This is here, and we have the Russians now. You can see that here, this forested area is fairly easy to see. The Russians have already reached this, so probably this whole area is now under at least Russian influence. So at the very least, it's a gray zone, if not under Russian control by now. South of the Seversky Donetsk, we have the Russians attacking towards Siversk over the past couple of days, but I do not see any change in territory. This is different though in Chasiv Yar. Here we have the Russians being held back on the western bank of the canal for probably months by now, but for the first time in quite a while we actually have a geolocation of movement. The Russians managed to attack further towards the west. In the past we had them roughly here, and at this point, but now they have advanced further inward. They are now at this point here, meaning they managed to advance a couple of 100 meters, probably 200 to 300 meters towards the west. In the video that is the basis for this geolocation, they are being struck and suffering serious losses, but it shows that the Ukrainians have been pushed back at the very least temporarily in this area. So where the total area of control is by now is unclear, but the gray zone should probably be extended roughly like this over the past since in the next map update. Further south, we have no change that I can confirm in Toretsk itself, and from New York we have no change either, but here we have a fresh video showing the execution of 3 more prisoners of war that were killed by the Russians. It was filmed by a drone, and the Azov regiment said its 12th Special Forces Brigade captured one of the perpetrators. So here there might be a court case in this regard, but the video shows in all details how prisoners of war are being executed by the Russians. Further to the west in the direction of Pokrovsk, I can confirm one change in territory. The Russians now fully control the eastern part of Tsukurine. The western part here is partially still Ukrainian held and under influence by the Ukrainians. It's currently being fought over, but the Russians have solidified and consolidated their control over the eastern part. They are increasingly pushing towards the west here as well. The Russians have also taken over control over the rest of Krasnohorivka. Now, the main part of Krasnohorivka is under Russian occupation for quite a while, but now they were able to take roughly this part here. This is likely due to a withdrawal from the Ukrainians towards the west. They are slowly withdrawing as they are under pressure and are in some kind of pocket here, which makes it needed, which forces the need to slowly withdraw to the west to not be overwhelmed and encircled here. Further south, I have no change that I can confirm at Vuhledar itself. Interestingly enough, we have the Russians in the town of Solota Niva. Here, they have managed to advance further towards the west. We have them. This is the geolocation here, where we see they are now in the town of Solota Niva, which is fairly small, but this is probably under Russian control as well. So the front line is likely like this as of now. While in Vuhledar itself, nothing has changed. I almost forgot the changes a little bit to its northeast. Here we have the Russians advancing first in Katerinivka. Here they've reached the southern part of the town itself at this point here. And we have the Russians advancing north of Konstantinivka and towards the west as well. We have them now at in this direction and up here. So this is probably under Russian control here as well by now. Then the Russians have attacked in a new direction and actually gained some ground. This is next to the former reservoir. The Russians managed to gain a foothold in this area here, in this built-up area. We have a geolocation of this at this point. They have been spotted here with infantry forces. From the videos, I see that they were shelled, that were being attacked, but I do not see them losing the position here. So at the very least, this is now a contested area, a gray zone. It might be occupied by the Russians as of now. Overall, we have first of all, we have no more changes along the territory towards west. And overall, a new analysis that was published is saying that the Russians have lost since the beginning of the Avdiivka offensive. That's in October last year. So where they took the town of Avdiivka and then advanced towards Pokrovsk. Since then, they have lost equipment, heavy equipment, equivalent to 5 divisions. In total, it's being mentioned that they've lost 1,830 armored fighting vehicles, including 539 MBTs and 1,020 IFVs. But the important thing is I checked the data that was given, and some of it, or actually a fair amount of it, shows, for instance, abandoned, damaged, etc. So while those were lost in combat, while they couldn't continue fighting at this very moment, the fact that Russia is advancing allows them to recover at least a part of those and restore at least a part of those that were recovered. So while the numbers are currently being spread around by various media that the Russians have lost 5 divisions, in total 1,830 fighting vehicles. But at the same time, we need to acknowledge that the total number of losses that are permanently lost to the Russian armed forces is likely somewhat lower. As I said, the numbers include, for instance, abandoned vehicles, which is only a problem for the Russians if those abandoned vehicles are then later destroyed by the Ukrainians or captured by them. And while both of it happens, especially the first one, while a lot of them are being destroyed, that's not a guarantee that all of them is that this is happening at the same time. Ukraine at the same time has lost 369 vehicles in the area here as well. This is also visually confirmed. Here, on the other hand, it's more serious as the Ukrainians are losing ground. It's more difficult for them to recover disabled vehicles. So their loss ratio is, or should at least in general, be higher. Then we have news from the Russian Milblogger sphere. They say that the S-70 that was shot down was actually shot down by a Sukhoi 57. That's Russia's stealth fighter, and it was doing a combat mission together with the S-70 when the Russians lost contact to it, so it was shot down, which is now being mocked as being the first air-to-air victory of a Sukhoi 57, unfortunately against an own drone. In troop generation, we have some news as well. The Russian government is now readying 90 billion rubles. That's almost $1 billion for prizes or for money that is being given to soldiers that sign a contract. So almost $1 billion in equivalent for the time of 25 to 27, showing us that the Russians intend to keep a vast part of their recruitment in this regard. They are now getting the financial means ready together to avoid doing another mobilization, as this is currently the aim of the Russian government. The Ukrainians are also saying a small number of North Korean soldiers, mostly engineering personnel, is in Donetsk right now. According to the Ukrainians, they are repairing or improve quality of faulty North Korean ammunition that is being used and stored in Donetsk. No more details about this. But we have details, according to the Times, North Korea is giving Russia right now 3 million shells a year. This is more than the West produces, which is just coming from North Korea towards Russia. We have good news for the Ukrainians as well, though. We first we have the Dutch government officially confirming that Dutch F-16 are now in Ukraine. This should increase the number of F-16 fighter jets that are available to the Ukrainians, even though we do not have the absolute number. And then there's a video which supposedly shows the Panzerbandwagen 302. Those are from Sweden, and they have been the whole stock that Sweden had is promised to the Ukrainians, and we see them being shipped here. Supposedly, I do not see a geolocation, so while this could be wrong, it's probable that this is a delivery towards Ukraine. This is basically an equivalent to an M113, so a lightly armored personnel carrier, but in difference to the M113, what you see up here is a 20mm autocannon. This was salvaged from earlier fighter jets and has some issues, but it gives the Panzerbandwagen 302 a fairly decent firepower, especially in comparison to normal M113s. So this is an improvement for the Ukrainians that they will receive here soon. But that was already it from me for now for today's situation report. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. If you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon, and leave a comment. What do you think about the current developments that are happening? If this channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you, if you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.